question,
Yes.
and you realize that they have taught us World War II history like we're children. Like, I mean, it's everything they've told us, virtually everything they told us is either not true or a snippet of the truth, or omitting something that would make us question more of their narrative. And they freaked out when I shared a BBC documentary, no less, because they had tried to like wipe this from the universe about how Germans were ethnically cleansed. Following World War II. So there was no war going on. Immediately after, they allowed Stalin's to just go in.
And Poland, Czechoslovakia, they just wiped them off the face of the map.
It's insane. And then to know that prior to World War II, there's a book written by a guy, last name Kaufman, I'm blanking on the first name, where he said it's Germany must perish. Like they literally wanted to get rid of Anglo-Saxons. And so when you have that context and you're going, whoa, 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 why was I never told about this book, which was published in America, about like, he wrote a book about how they would have to just annihilate them, how they had to make them infertile, that they couldn't produce. And then you hear at the end of that war what was done to German-speaking civilians, and that should send a chill down your spine that you don't know it. That is what scares me, that we were never taught it, which means that we were specifically told an angle, and that angle has been protected for a very long time for a reason that must be evil, because lies can only be served to protect evil.
Yes. And you know what? I actually, and I'm going to get put in jail anyway, so I don't care. I'm going to speak my mind because you're here. So I actually realized this very, very early on. So I've always been a big history buff. And when I was 19, 20, 21, I was still traveling the world a little bit. And then I realized that every single country has their own version of World War II history. Every single country is different, even all the ones that we're supposed to agree with. Every country is different. France teaches that, you know, the French resistance overthrew the Nazis and they never really surrendered because the French were still fighting and they won the war even though they surrendered. Poland obviously lost epically to both sides. However, the Polish are taught that it was the Polish men who stood up and blah, blah, blah. The Russian actually version of World War II is the most accurate that can be taught because they talk about all the major fighting and all the heavy lifting essentially to defeat the Germans was done by them and all the blood was spilled by them. They're kind of correct. But as a young man, when I was reading all these different versions of World War II history and what we were taught, you know what the Germans are taught? Do you know German World War II history if you're in school in Germany? German World War II history is as follows. Some evil people took over our country. Handful of people, wasn't us. Very small handful of people took over our country. And the German resistance movement, along with the Allies, got rid of the evil people. So every country has a different history. And as a young man, I was like, well, this can't all be true. So that's when I started digging into it and understanding World War II history in a way that if I spoke it vocally in public and I had an audience, I'd get put in jail. But by all means, whatever country you're from, please look into this because it's different in every country for a reason, because it suits their particular narrative. So what's the actual truth? Right. The truth is none of the countries who won teach an accurate version of World War II history. None of the countries who won teach the actual reasons why the war happened. None of the countries who won teach the aftermath and, you know, what happened because the war was won by the people who won. So it's a rabbit hole that you are digging up publicly. And I'll see you in jail.
Well, because it just takes one seed of doubt. And so for me, having watched a documentary, my jaw on the floor, even learning, and I think this is really why the press attacked me, that so many of the people who executed those crimes were then protected by the state of Israel.
Absolutely.
That's already an existential crisis for the allied union between Israel and America. If Americans start waking up and going, wait a second, why would you guys be protecting people who, Solomon Morel, who executed these crimes against Germans, and you refused to extradite him when they actually wanted to prosecute him for his crimes? That doesn't really make sense. We were told, like, you especially should have a reaction to people that are committing a genocide against people for no reason.
Surely.
Then you go, okay, well, that's weird. And so it takes, for me, that was a major seed that was planted. Like, why would you not tell me about what happened to the Germans? And then when my German friends were privately thanking me and saying my videos were going viral in Germany, and that not only were their ancestors slaughtered, murdered, or ethnically cleansed and pushed out, but they then passed speech laws. So they could never talk about it.
I know, ever.
You think about how scary that is.
Your
child being lined up and shot.
Yeah, they just put an 83-year-old woman in jail for questioning World War II history in Germany. I believe she's 83 or 93.
She's been in jail for a long time. She said she'll never refute the lies. She's
in and out of jail, just like me. And she'll never apologize. And I said this on Twitter, on X. I said, nobody, no judge, no lawyer, no court, nobody should be allowed to prosecute this woman unless they're older than her. Because you're taking people who have, you know, it's like your child literally arguing with you about what you saw and how you lived in 1994,
Right.
way before they were born. And I was like, well, isn't that wild that this woman was around in 1939, 1944? She was around. She saw things with her own eyes. And people who were born in the 1960s and 70s are sitting behind a desk with a book of what they're supposed to think about these events, saying this woman is wrong. I'm like, isn't that wild? Nobody who's younger than her should be allowed to even sit in that room and tell her that she has to go to jail for having her opinions, because she was literally an eyewitness to things. And yeah, incredibly scary. And you want to talk about, I mean, obviously the people protected by the state of Israel. Look who was protected by the United States. Who was the first CEO essentially of NASA? Werner von Braun, the man who invented the V2 rocket, the man who invented this weapon of death that was obviously hit London a couple of times. He was the best rocket scientist in the world, but because he was a rocket scientist, okay, cool. You come to the United States. Oh, you're fine. Oh, you were just doing your rocket science, but we don't care that you were SS because we know you just needed the funding.
Yeah, and that should make people ask some questions. Like, you're told that you went to go crush them, but then we
took them all. Everyone useful, was suddenly an American citizen. He's buried in the same graveyard as all the American war heroes and presidents, etc. And he's buried in a graveyard, I believe, in Washington D.C. alongside ex-presidents, war heroes, people who fought in the American Civil War. He's given a hero's burial, a hero's funeral, but he was an SS officer.